Hello. What is up, everybody? I just realized as I said hello, I didn't put on my wedding ring or my watch today. How weird is that? Welcome to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. And also, Happy New Year. It's officially 2021. This is the first episode of 2021. My name is Jeff, also known as the Revit Kid. I want to thank you guys for joining me today, for joining me the last 38 episodes. I think this is episode 39, which is pretty cool. If you are new to this channel, be sure to make sure you subscribe here on YouTube, as well as hitting the notification bell. That way you'll get notified whenever I post a new video, but also whenever I go live. Definitely also check out bimafterdark.com, where I have a blog called the Revit Kid blog. You can see a whole bunch of great content I released, even though I wasn't live during the holidays. I did release a few pre-recorded videos of tutorials. And also, if you want to see the previous 37 episodes, make sure you head on over to live.bimafterdark.com. So I'm pretty excited about today's topic. Family creation is always a fun thing to teach. It's not always easy to teach, but it's definitely a fun thing to teach. And I know lighting fixtures is one of those things that just everyone wants to know how to make, because there's just so many different variations of light fixtures out there, and I think the content is lagging behind a little bit. There are some companies that you'll find some pretty good content, but for the most part, you do end up having to make some custom light fixtures because you do want to see what they look like in the space. And so today we're going to run through a light fixture. I'll tell a story about it and all that good stuff. A quick reminder that we are live right now. If you're watching me at 12:30 Eastern US time here on Thursday, there is a chat, and I want you and I encourage you to ask questions and interact with myself as well as whoever else is on the chat, because that's what we do here. It's a fun weekly show where we talk about BIM, Revit, and all kinds of related software in the AEC industry. Looks like we got a few folks here. Eric Johnson from California, Dan from Connecticut. What's up, Dan? I'm laughing because I work with Dan, and he said it as if I don't know he's from Connecticut. Hello from Belgium. Hey, Tom from Texas is joining us live. Tom, I know you always get frustrated when you can't make it live, so welcome. And he's also complimenting the t-shirt. Thank you very much. These are the new designs of the Noob Expert. I had to wear it today because we're talking about family creation. If you're interested in the shirts, either reach out to me or head over to shop.bimafterdark.com. So before we jump into the content, I do want to take a moment to recognize our sponsor of this episode, which is BIM Box. I'm going to run my reel. If you guys haven't seen this reel, it is pretty cool. I love showing it because I think it's awesome. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what BIM Box is and how you can take advantage of watching and learning about them from me. All right, so there we have it. BIM Box, if you couldn't tell from that little promo video, they make laptops and desktop computers for the AEC industry, but more specifically for us Revit users. If you're looking for a company that literally spent their entire existence optimizing, creating, and designing a computer for Revit, then you look no further. BIM Box is it. I personally, once you see my other camera, you'll see that I have a BIM Box sitting here as well as a laptop. The thing cranks. Recently, I downloaded a almost 5 gigabytes worth of models for one project. This crazy detailed model. And I seriously probably can't open them on any other machine but the BIM Box. It's snappy. It runs fast. The other thing that I wanted to mention as well is currently anyone who geeks out on this sort of computer stuff, you may have ordered or been looking to try and get the new NVIDIA 3000 cards. If you aren't familiar with it, I'll tell you that they're their new version of NVIDIA's graphics cards, and they're pretty much impossible to get. They sold out in seconds when they were released. And I spoke to Buck this morning at BIMBox, and he told me to mention today that they have 300 in stock right now at BIMBox, ready to ship. So you don't have to order it and then wait months while the company that you ordered from gets them. They're there. They turn all your machines around in 10 to 14 days. 3-year warranty, fantastic sales force. So if you're interested, make sure you head on over to bimbox.bimafterdark.com or send an email to sales@bimboxusa.com. Let Buck and his crew know that you learned about them from me, and they'll definitely hook you up. So thank you, Bimbox, for sponsoring this episode. You guys are amazing. And wow, we got a lot of people joining us today from all over the place. I was checking out the chat as we were joining here. England, Canada, Uruguay, Kansas, Ohio, I think I saw. Wow. Oh, they're Brazil. Nice. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. And again, I do want to remind everyone that we are live. So I'm going to do my best to teach and show you sort of what I'm working on here, while also checking the chat and trying to keep up with what you guys are asking if you have questions on what I'm showing you, etc. So without further ado, let's jump into the topic of the day, which is parametric modeling, more specifically creating a light fixture. Tom's going to be getting his new Bimbox laptop soon. Nice, man. That's awesome. I've known Tom for a little while now. He's a member of the BIM After Dark community. And the last time I met Tom in person was pre-COVID. And he launched his laptop, and I think it might have taken him 15 to 20 minutes to start his laptop, open Revit, and get to a file. So I'm hoping that with his new Bimbox, he will be a little faster and more efficient. Robert Fendler from Westchester, New York. Hey, man, not too far away from where I'm sitting right now. Okay. So what I wanted to do was sort of talk about the light fixture and tell the story as to why I'm modeling it. And I think it's important because it's very similar to why you may be modeling a light fixture yourself. And so what I wanted to do is open up, for those of you who have been following along with the episodes here and what I'm working on here personally, I'm building an addition to my house. Actually, super exciting. Some update there is we're starting excavation this weekend, foundation the following weekend, and then we're going to be rolling from there. So I'm going to be documenting it, and I haven't figured out how I want to document and present it, but I am going to be documenting it, videos, pictures, all that good stuff. So I may be documenting it here on the show, maybe just on the channel. We'll see. But anyways, now that we're at this point and it's finally moving, it's time to choose some things, and actually order things like light and fixtures and finishes and all those interior things that you think about, but we just haven't gotten there. It's kind of funny when I'm doing a project for a client, the amount of time and effort that goes into creating, let's say, interior renderings to present the design and make decisions is incredible. But for some reason, when it was for myself, I kind of use white mode and just some other things because I kind of can see it in my head. But now I'm at the point where myself and my beautiful wife, Melissa, we need to actually choose things. So we're getting to the point where I want to render them, see them in space, and so on. So anyways, all that being said, if I share real quickly, this is the light fixture that we're looking at. This is for our dining room as part of the addition. And, this is on Amazon. So it's kind of funny, you never know where you'll find things. But right now, we're looking at one on Amazon. And the reality is we just want to see this thing in place. And so this is the light fixture. And obviously, if I search hard enough, I may be able to find a family that's similar. But I haven't really found one that's too similar. And so here's the light fixture. And, of course, what we want to do now is we want to see this thing in the place, right, in space, and decide if it makes sense for us, the size, the location, the height, etc. And all of this stuff is probably stuff that you've all gone through. And so I thought it was kind of cool. It would be kind of cool to just run through and build this light fixture here, and then sort of walk you through how I would approach it, because I think for your daily lives, it'd probably be beneficial for you to be able to do this, right? Be able to build a light fixture from scratch. Some of them are going to be challenging, right? And you're going to want to possibly simplify some things to some extent. But yeah. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is when building families, especially more complex families, for example. If it's a box. If it's a box with a couple other boxes, I'm probably not going to be doing this. But for anything that's generally a little more complex, I usually start actually right here. Let me hold it right there with a piece of paper. It happened to be on trace because I was drawing other stuff. Usually it's in a notebook. But what I'm doing there is I'll pull up the picture of what this why and what this sketch looks like. So here's sort of the sketch there. If you follow me on Twitter, you may have saw that I tweeted this. But what I'm trying to do is not only am I trying to look at where all of my reference planes and dimensions and things I want to flex are going to be, But also maybe what makes sense to be within one family, what makes sense to be hosted. And so this is a great lesson in showing you why nested families can be beneficial to your workflow. And they seem complicated at first, but the reality is they're not that bad, and they do make your life a little easier. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking at it and I'm saying, where do I want my host family to be? What do I want to be nested into that host? And then what parameters and flexibility do I want it? The other thing I will mention too is this light fixture obviously doesn't have to be parametric. When you look at it, I'm just I'm building the one from Amazon, and I just want to see it as I'm going to buy it. So the reality is I could build it to size without any flexibility and just make extrusions all over the place and call it a day. But that wouldn't be any fun, right? And it wouldn't be a great lesson for you guys. So the other thing is I thought by making it parametric, there were different sizes. I didn't flip through them, but there were different sizes, and you could change the lengths and the widths and the depths. And so I thought maybe by doing this, maybe I want to flex it and see what it looks like longer and shorter, etc. So, no matter what you want to make this as a family component. You don't want to build this in place. Whether you want it to be flexible or not is up to you. I like to try and make everything possible flexible. And now I've got this nice family that I could use moving forward if I wanted to. But anyways, the orange on this sketch are my dimensions. So those are what I'm considering parameters or something flexible, whether they're EQs or whether they're overall dimensions. And then you could see I'm kind of looking at what do I want to be nested and what do I want to be hosted or what do I want to be modeled within the host. And so let's talk a little bit about why might you not want to model all of this in the same family. And honestly, there's a lot of reasons why. But the biggest reason is going to be the number of reference planes, dimensions, and parameters that you'll be seeing are just going to drive you bonkers, right? I mean, that to me is one of the number one reasons why you want to start using nested families. Is that if I go back to this sketch right here, you can see the cage down on the bottom here, and then the housing, I guess you could call it up here. All of this kind of overlaps, right? When you think about the actual fixture. And so all of those reference planes, all those dimensions, they can exist in the same family, but they would be extremely, extremely complicated to try and figure out what reference plane goes where, what dimension goes where, and it also gets extremely convoluted. The other reason why you might want to nest is in a light fixture family. If you need more than one light source, you pretty much have to nest. It just makes it just makes it so much easier to do. I don't even know if you can physically make more than one light source in a light fixture family without nesting. So as you can see on the bottom there, my light fixture or my bulbs, basically those Edison bulbs, those are going to be a nested family. The cage is going to be a nested family, and then the housing with the cables and all that stuff is going to be a nested family. And so that was my initial sketch. As I went through it, and we're going to go through it right now, but as I went through it, I realized that there actually was going to need to be a few more, not a few more. There's going to be one more nested family, and we'll talk about why. And so as you can see, let me just zoom out a little. Windows picture thing is just lovely, isn't it? So as you can see, we have the host, which is the railing, and this the plate on the top, and then the plate on the bottom. Then we have number 2, which is my Edison bulbs, and that's going to be placed in 4. There's 4 of them, so you make the family once, you nest it in, and you place it 4 times. There is my cage, and then you'll notice the X bracing on the cage is actually a nested family, and we'll talk about that in a second. So at the end of the day, there ends up being three nested families into one hosted family. So it takes 4 files to make this one family. But we're going to walk through why that is and how, why that's important. So here's the project. For those of you who haven't seen it, again, you can head over to live.bimafterdark and see some of the other episodes where I talk about it. But it's just a small addition off the back of my house, which is going to have a dining room up here and then an office down here with a deck out there. So we're looking at this dining room space. And just to give you a sense of what the final one looks like in space, here's Endscape. And again, I'm just digging through. I just now started adding some finishes and details in the interior. I didn't do too much more than I needed for documents, but you can see here's the light fixture there, right in space. Okay, so pretty cool. You can see it, as it is. So now let's talk about how this family's built and why it's nested the way it is, and I'll run through sort of the start. So here is my host family, and what I mean by host family is this is where all of the other family files, the other pieces of this component are going to be loaded into, and then this is what you load into the project. So everything else I show you after this, you're not loading into the project. Okay, those are loading into the family. So this right here is the host, and I'm looking at this, and I said usually there's sort of two reasons why I choose something to be a host. One is the more simple objects. So you can see this is pretty simple. If I click, there's an extrusion here, there's an extrusion here, and there's two rods here, I guess you could say. And so that makes kind of sense, right? The other thing is obviously a host family. If you're hosting it to an object, you're going to want that those things to be part of the object. And so I know there's going to be a little bit of a debate, and I'm completely open to it. So make sure you guys chat down on the bottom. For this one, I actually went with a ceiling hosted light fixture, or sorry, a ceiling hosted generic model. Okay, not a light fixture, because I didn't want the light source in there. So I started with a ceiling hosted generic model. So let's do that. Let's go File, New, and I'll talk a little bit about why I did that. File, New, Family. And of course, all my stuff is going to open on the other screen. I apologize. So I'm going to go with a generic model ceiling based. So two reasons. I know a lot of people like to do face based, which I'm a huge fan of face based for light fixtures, because then you don't need a ceiling there. You can host it to anything you want. My biggest issue with face based, especially when it comes to today and right now, is that you have to build it upside down. And anyone who's ever built a face based component, the face is down, you have to build it upside down, which is super confusing, especially when you're trying to teach. So that's one of the main reasons why I did a ceiling based. Otherwise, we can go through the reasons why you may want to do one or the other. Real quickly before I jump in, Rick just asked what the file size is. Honestly, I didn't even look yet, Rick. Let's take a peek. I'm curious now. So 732 kilobytes. So not too bad. Still under a meg. So I mean, I'll take that. Okay, so now this is a ceiling-based family. So if I go in 3D, right, there's my ceiling. So I'm gonna be drawing it basically, in an RCP type of deal. So as with everything in family creation, what we want to do is we want to build our reference planes first. Okay, you want to build your cage. If you're interested in the more basic side of family creation, after this, if you feel like this all of a sudden went over your head, if you head on over to live.bim after dark, or I'm just going to quickly find the post for you guys. I did a live session back in October. Here's the post. So I'll click it in the link there, or in the chat there, where I built a much simpler family. But what you'll see is that the whole idea with families is you want to create your rig out of reference planes, flex and test it, and then you build your geometry. It's the easiest way to do it. So if I'm going back to my sketch and I'm looking at this host now, you can see I have a plate, and then I have a bulb holder, we'll call it, or a bulb housing, and then I have two rods. So we're just going to quickly draw the reference planes for those. And I am going to go a little bit faster this part because we only have so much time, and I really want to get to some of the nuts and bolts. So what I'm going to do is just draw a reference plane, RP on my keyboard. I believe this is 10 by 10. If you don't believe me, I'll go here and show you. So you can see the box is about 10.3 inches by, or the top box is 10 inches by 4.25 inches. So we're gonna do the build plate right now. So there's 5. I'm gonna use MM on my keyboard to mirror it. I'm gonna draw another reference plane here. I'm just gonna move it out. What did I say? 2.25 inches. Sure. MM on my keyboard to mirror it. Okay. So now these reference planes here, these are gonna represent the wall plate, right? This is the top wall plate. Remember, I'm looking down in a floor plan view right now. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about with reference planes. It's really important that that you understand what we're doing is building the rig to flex everything, and then we'll build our geometry. Okay, so now if I want to draw one more reference plane on this side for the housing piece, which again, I'll go back here. The housing piece I'm going to call as the part that's holding the bulbs down on the bottom there. It's a long rectangular piece. I can't click over it to see it. Oh, I should choose a different image. Let's see. So this piece down here, number 2, is above the number 2. There's the housing piece. So that, I believe, is 20-something inches long. So it's 25.6 inches long. So We'll do 5, whatever is half of that. We'll just do 10 inches there for now. And then now I'm going to mirror this. Scoured just said, sorry, I'm just checking as I go along. Scoured says, I usually start with a non-host and then set it to a work plane check and check if it's always vertical. It is more flexible so you can rotate the work plane and etc. Okay, yeah, so Scoured is starting with a non-hosted object. And again, as I mentioned, one of the main reasons why I did it was for clarity and understanding while teaching. But you can, there's different ways you can do it. Notice what I'm doing here is as I'm drawing these reference planes, I'm actually pulling them back. This is something I do to help me in this view understand what all these reference planes are for. You can name them, you can do whatever you want with them, but I'm just sort of pulling them back. So now I'm going to draw, I just mirrored this. So now you can see I have these reference planes, and then I have these reference planes here. So this is going to be my bulb plate, which is actually way too thick, so we'll fix that after. And then my electrical conduit plate, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it at the top, wall plate maybe, whatever. So that's going to get us most of this. But now the only two other things we need are the cables. So I'm going to draw 2 reference planes here, RP on my keyboard for reference planes. I'm going to make these, I'm going to make this one a little bit longer. And somebody asked if when I flex it, does everything flex with it? Yes. And so I didn't show you, I guess, how it works parametrically, but we'll just show it at the end then. So if I click here and type MM, these right here, these are going to represent my cables. So if I go back to the family, the 2 cables that you're running down there. And I'm going to show you some things that I do. Some people treat circles differently, but I think this is a pretty good trick. All I need is an X. I need an intersection because my circles are going to actually lock to the intersection. Okay, so that's basically all I need for my host. I'm going to need a few more for the bulbs, but mounting plate, good call. Yeah, we'll call it mounting plate. All right, so now I'm just going to make my dimensions. Remember, reference planes, dimensions, flex it, then we draw geometry. Okay, so I'm going to do DI on my keyboard. I'm going to do overalls. I want to keep this thing centered, so I'm going to do dimension down to the middle. DI on my keyboard, overall, dimension down to the middle, and EQ. I'm going to change the scale a little so that the text isn't too big here for you guys. There we go. All right, so that's going to get my overall plates. And then if I go in here, I'll do my mounting plate, which is what we all just decided to call it. I'm going to EQ this. And then I'll do this dimension here, which is my mounting plate depth, I guess you could call it. I'm going to EQ this here. My circles or my rods are actually going to be just centered on that mounting plate on each side. I think is probably the easiest way to do it. So if the mounting plate grows, it stays centered. So there we go there. So now I basically have my rig for that piece, not the rest of the cage, etc. So now all I need to do is assign these dimensions to parameters and then flex them. So I'm going to click this, and again, I know I'm going a little fast. If you want to dig through more beginning stuff, it's the same stuff, just slow it down. Check out that episode I just posted. But I'm going to click on the top here to add a parameter. I'm going to call this one, what did we want to call this? I'm going to call this my housing plate width, and then this one's going to be my housing plate depth. Housing plate depth. And I'm making these all type parameters. And I'm going to call this one my mounting plate depth. And then this one I'm going to do as my mounting plate width. Okay. So now, right, if I wanted to, I can quickly just flex these parameters. So I'm just hitting the blue boxes on the top. And I can change this. So my mounting plate width, I'll change to 12 inches and click apply. And you'll see the reference planes, you could see they grew. If I go back to 10 inches and click apply, you can see they shrink. And all this stuff stays in the middle. I'm not going to flex everything right now, but when you're building families, I suggest you flex everything before you build it. So then all we have to do is draw our geometry in here. The one thing I just, no, that's fine. So how do you draw a geometry? Pretty simple. We're just going to create extrusions and set it and go on. But I just realized this is just floor plan view. We're going to want some reference planes in elevation, right? We want to have control over the thickness of the plates. We want to have control over the distance away from the ceiling. So I'm going to go to my front elevation, and you can see here's all my reference planes from my floor plan view, and here's my ceiling there. Okay, so I'm going to draw a reference plane here. Sometimes I like to draw them and use temporary dimensions. Sometimes I like to draw them and move them. Right now I'm drawing them, moving them. Doesn't really make a difference. I'm going to move this down. I think it was 3'9". I don't remember exactly, but I'll just do 3'9" for now. And then I'm going to copy this down 10 inches. So that's generally going to give us our cage, let's say. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to take this reference plane. I'm going to move it down 1/2 inch for the mounting plate. So right that, and you notice what I'm doing here is I pull this reference plane back. This is just something that I do that makes it really, really helpful when you're trying to figure out where geometry goes, is to pull your reference planes back. I mean, you could name them too, but pulling them back to sort of draw the geometry for you is extremely helpful. Like even this one here, which you could see is going all the way down. If you were to pull this back, because this is only controlling the mounting plate, right? Now you're kind of drawing your geometry there with the reference planes. So something super helpful, and hopefully you guys can see the reference planes okay. I know reference planes are one of those things that are hard to project, but what I'm essentially doing is making making this elevation here. Okay, so now let me just dimension it really quickly. I'm going to dimension it off of the reference plane. Again, we can go through a whole debate on whether to hit the geometry or the plane. I'm going to use the reference plane that represents the ceiling without debating why. And then I'm going to do another separate one. So you can't have a string here. You need these to be 2 separate dimensions. And these are going to represent the offset from the ceiling and the height of let's say, the cage. I just realized looking at this again, if I go back to the picture of it, oops, we're actually going to need a few more reference planes in here, because as you can see that what we're going to call the housing, the bulb housing, is actually offset from the cage. So I'm going to copy down now, and I'm going to make up the dimension of this and just call it what you're seeing there. Awesome. Looks like Mark said you can see the reference planes fine. So now this is going to be our actual plate. This is going to be our cage, let's say, and we're probably going to need more reference planes there for the cage. So we'll get through that down the road. I'm going to go to a more complete version, anyways. So then here I'm just going to hit, and I'm going to I'm going to call this one offset from ceiling. Again, you can call these whatever you want, but offset from ceiling, or maybe down from ceiling, whatever. And then this one I'm going to call the cage height. And then here, depending on what flexibility you want, these can be lock dimensions, or these can be parameters. I like to try and give parameters wherever possible. Sometimes it gets a little crazy when you give parameters everywhere as possible. So here we might say, just because if it gets too high, we might want to flex it. I might say bulb housing height, or offset. I'm not really sure what we want to call that. And then here, maybe I'll say the bulb housing is always going to be 3/4 of an inch, so I'm locking it. Okay, but that's not really important. What I really want to show you, oh, actually, I didn't hit this one either. Let me hit this one here, right? And that's going to be our mounting plate height, or mounting plate thickness, whatever term you like to use. Mounting plate height. Okay. So now drawing the geometry is simple. Right now we're just doing rectangles. So if I go back to my reference plane, I'm going to say create extrusion. I'm going to, oops, I just realized by shifting my reference plane, I didn't see that mounting plate anymore. So I just went to the reference, the ceiling plan instead of the floor plan. I'm going to go to extrusion. I'm going to draw a rectangle. And if you guys saw my other tutorial, rectangles are nice because when you click a rectangle, you get all of your locks in here, right? And then you lock, click finish, go to your front. Here it is there, and then you can pull this up and lock it and lock it and lock it. Okay. So these, right? These are just going to be rectangles, right? If I go underneath here, here it is there. Right, there's my rectangle. So I don't need to draw all those rectangles. What I want to do is show you how I'm going to draw these rods first. Okay, so if you remember, if I go on my ceiling plan, right, the rods are going to be centered on here. And this is one of those things where, yeah, the rods could be a nested family if you want. It doesn't really make a difference, but and sometimes it's easier because they're circles. Maybe you can lock this way, but I do want to show you a way that you can create circles that stay and do what you want without actually making a nested family. So I'm going to say create extrusion, and I'm going to click this circle. And I'm just going to draw a circle that for now is 1/4 of an inch in radius. There we go there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the circle. And I'm going to say make center mark visible. When I click that, you'll see there's this pink center mark. And what's really cool about that is if you use the line command, AL on your keyboard, so I just click AL on my keyboard, I click my reference plane, and then I click that center mark, and then I lock it, you'll notice it actually lets you lock to it, right? If I do the same thing here, click this reference plane, click the center mark, and lock it, now I've got a circle that's locked to the intersection. So I don't need a whole bunch of reference planes all over the place. It's just 2 reference planes intersecting, and that's going to keep my circle exactly where it needs to be. All right. So now I'm also going to, just for the sake of it, I'm going to give myself the ability to control the diameter of this, or the radius. So I'm going to click my dimension. Whoa, look at that scale, huh? Let's go down a little bit. So I just turned my temporary radius into a permanent dimension, clicking the little blue dimension thing, icon. And then I'm going to say create a new parameter, and I'm going to call this cable radius or rod radius, whatever. And now when I make my other circle, I can just apply that there. And now if I click finish, now we have a circle. If I go to the front, we have a circle that I can lock, and I can lock here. And now if the width of this flexes, right, this circle is going to go with this reference plane. So to show you what I mean, if I change the mounting plate width to 1'6" and click apply, notice this reference plane went with it. So the circle is now locked there, which is pretty cool, right? And then you do the same thing on the other side. You would just do circle, click it, 1/4 of an inch, etc., etc., etc. So now we sort of have our host. And let me go to the this file here and highlight just the host so we can look at it. There we go. So then when we're done, this is essentially what we have. Okay, we just have these pieces, and they're all flexible, right? They're all flexible to what we need. So pretty straightforward now. Now you're breaking it down into components that are manageable and understandable, right? And if I go to my front view now, this is the final. You'll notice there's a few more reference planes, but pretty much the same thing, right? There's a fixture height. There's a bulb plate. I guess I called it bulb plate when I made it this week. And then I locked the 3/4 of an inch, but I give myself the ability to modify this. So the only reference planes we're missing right now that we drew in the original one. Eric just asked, could you copy that rod? Yes, you could, but hold on, let me find that. But you will most likely have to you will have to reassign the centers. If you're copying like this in floor plan, so I just typed CO and copied it over, it should hold on to the top and bottom locks, but obviously you're going to have to if I go to edit extrusion, you're going to have to do align, AL on my keyboard, and then redo the centers here, AL on my keyboard. So good point there. And let me actually check. Let's see if it kept. So when you copy something, as long as it stays in plane of where it was, a lot of times it will hold on to that. But let me just see. So if I move these down, no, look at it, didn't. So you're going to have to relock a few of these things. There we go there. Now they work. So yeah, copying helps, but you do and this is why I do a lot of times. I will use copying as much as possible, but I do a lot of times recreate or create if I'm placing things, replace them, because you most likely are going to have to relock, reconstrain things when you copy them, and so copying them is fine as long as you double check that all the constraints. And how do you do that? You flex it, right? And that's why it's so important that you always after you build your rig in reference with reference planes, you flex your rig. After you build your geometry, you flex your rig. You always want to flex it over and over and over again to make sure that you're not blowing crap up, because you will blow crap up. It's just what happens. All right, I can't remember what colors are my my project now. Sorry about that. Here we are. No, that's the other one. Let's see. Where's my host? Where's my host? And remember, guys, this is live, so feel free to ask questions as I'm going through it. I literally don't know what I did with my host. Here it is. Okay. So as you can see, there's a few more reference planes here that I added. And these are actually simple reference planes that are going to be to control the bulbs, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are just going to control the location of the bulbs. And those, if I go to my floor plan, you'll see those are actually right here. Right here. And they're equalized. Right, so here's 1, 2, 3, 4. They're equalized, and then they have a lock of 2 inches on the end. I didn't feel like adding a parameter to this. So they'll always stay 2 inches to the end, and then they equalize. I did not make it yet so that it's an array parameter where it's going to show 4 or 5 bulbs, which you can do, but yeah, that's a little bit further than you want. Karina just asked, if you make a lot of light fixture families, would it make sense to create a rod family that can be nested into the parent families? Yes, but something like a rod is something that, to me, doesn't really make a difference. You're going to place it, and then guess what? You're going to have to align the centers, lock, and then align the top and bottom, even if they're instance parameters. So yes, you could do that. It's fine. But honestly, it doesn't make a huge difference. In fact, it may actually be, it's about the same. It would probably be the exact same amount of time, efficiency-wise. But that's a good point. So Karina was just asking if you made a rod family instead and loaded it in. Okay, so that's sort of the housing, right? And if I go back to the 3D view of this is the host. Oh, where did my host go? Oh, there it is. Right, so this is the host. So now let's quickly talk about the bulbs. You saw I had reference planes there, and those just stay equalized. The bulb family is super simple. The bulb family, to me, I didn't bother. I completely forgot all the colors here. I'm sorry, I'm flipping through families, but the whole color thing with tabs makes so much sense, right? It helps, but at the same time, somehow having like the file name or something on the tab would just help everything, right? Anyways. I didn't feel a need to make the bulbs parametric. I just needed them to be the right size and then be a family so I can load them in, make multiple versions of them, but also bring in their light fixtures. So this is actually a light fixture family. So if I turn on the light source, you'll see this is it right here. And it's extremely simple. If I go to my front view, you can see I have it. Here's my light source elevation. I have that sort of centered on it. And then I have these reference planes, but they're there just as guides for me, looking up the size of the bulbs in the housing, roughly speaking, what they are. And then this right here, if I go to Edit Revolve, this is a revolve. And the reason I did it as a thin piece is because I want it to be glass, and then I wanted it to show the light through and have that effect in Enscape. So that's just a nice round bulb. And then this guy here, I think, is just an extrusion. Yep, it's just an extrusion. And that's it, right? And that's it. And this is something that makes sense to have as a nested family because it's easy to work within the element. It's easy to bring in and multiply across if you need multiple light sources. But also, this can be pulled into any other chandelier I do that has like an Edison bulb, for example, right? So super cool, super powerful. The only thing that you'd want to know or you'd want to pay attention to is making sure that whenever you do nested families, you want to give your materials a parameter, right? So my bulb housing and my bulb, right? They have their own material parameter. So that's one thing you want to do because once you start nesting things, you need to make sure that you have the ability to modify them from within your host family. Okay. Bob Lupo just asked, my colored tabs are coming from the Revit plugin. If you, again, check out previous episodes, I had Asan on a few episodes ago about Revit, and as part of Revit, you get beautifully tabbed colored tabs. Tom just asked, which light fixture did you use to create the bulb? I just went to a generic, so I went File, New, Family, and I just went to lighting fixture. That's it. So nothing but no host, nothing. It's just lighting fixture. Because what you're going to do is when you bring it in, and this is what I'll do right now. So if I go into my host now, man, I keep forgetting which one my host is. Where are you, host? This one. It's the dark purple color. Okay, so when I bring it into my host, I'm going to delete these bulbs and bring them in again for you guys. Right, so now, and actually, you know what? Let's delete the cage too. Why not? Should have done this from the start. Probably a good idea. I'm going to save as just because this is a live version now. Don't want to screw that up. Live. Okay, so now when you bring them in, I usually like to bring things in floor plan depending on where they're hosted. But once you bring them in, they're going to be placed like a component. Right, so here's my bulb. And I'm actually going to go to my ceiling plan so you can see it. Try again. And for some reason, it's not letting me see it. I'm not really sure what my view's set up, but I'm just going to place it out here somewhere. So I just placed it. It yelled at me. You can see there. Darren just asked, are you adding an electrical connector? I did not, but what you could do, even though I started with a generic model, as my host, because remember, this is all going into the host now. If you wanted a connector on the bulb itself, each bulb needs a connector, then you'd have to go through a process. But to put a connector in here is pretty simple. All I have to do is change my category, which I did already, from generic model to lighting fixture. And then from there you can add an electrical connector, and you can place it in your family. So you can place it wherever you want. I did not add it for this, just because I didn't really care right now, but you could easily add it without any issues. So here's the bulb, and you can see it's generic, so it's just kind of floating there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my front view, and I'm sorry I'm flipping a lot of views, but that's just what family stuff is like. Usually I'll have a tiled window, but because I have so many files open, it's just going to be even more confusing. So there's the bulb, and so what I'll do is I'll use the align command, right? And I'll align it and lock it, and then I'll align it horizontally and lock it, right? And now I have it good to go. And here I think if I copy this guy across reference planes, I believe, I don't even know if those are the bulb ones. I believe it'll hold on to the horizontal lock. Let me see. No, it doesn't. So you have to relock it anyways. So align, lock, align, lock. I don't think those are the bulb ones, are they? Yeah, I should have named these. Edward, nice to see you again, bud. Actually, I think I did name the bulb ones. Let me, if I click them, yeah, bulb 1, bulb 2. See that? Look at that. So I gave these reference planes names. So I can quickly look at this, and you can see I'm actually on the wrong bulb ones. So let me unlock this guy, do align, lock it, and then I can copy this over here. And so that's, Tom, why I just go with the generic, is because you don't really care about the host in this situation. You're going to place it, and you're going to use these locks to align it. So now I'm just AL on my keyboard, selecting the reference plane, selecting the base, locking it, selecting the reference plane, selecting the middle, locking it, and so on and so forth. And so now if I click each one of these, you'll see they've got their 2 locks and they're good to go. And so that's it. Yeah, Darren was saying the locks drop with the copy. Yeah. Oh, I didn't align them in this direction. Look at that. So let's go to my left view now. Which of course I can't see my my center line for some reason in the left view. How funny is that? There's my center line there. I'm going to do a line. I'm going to do a multiple align now, which those of you who don't know, it's up on the top. You just check the box. I'm going to click the reference plane. I'm going to click the middle, lock it, click the middle, lock it, click the middle, lock it, click the middle, lock it. Okay, so now I've aligned them in vertical, horizontal, and you can see in the other direction. So now we've got our light fixtures. And notice how they each have their own light source. And for those of you that don't know, when you nest a family in order to pull those parameters. So with a nested family, if you think about it, you've got this host, and then you're bringing in the light fixture, and then you're bringing in the host into the project. If you want to be able to control the nested family, in your project, you need to carry those parameters through. And so that's really important with nested objects. So I'm going to click one of these bulbs and show you what you have to do. If you click your nested object, so now I'm in my family, which loaded a family into it, I'm going to go to edit type. And if I want to bring in these materials, as you can see, if I go to none, what you would do is you'd click associate family parameter. So by doing that, you're saying, I want to now take this family parameter, so if it's the color of the light bulb, and I want to associate it with the parameter in this family, which is, color of the light bulb. And so you're giving the project environment the ability to select and modify a parameter that could be 3 or 4 files deep, which is super cool, super powerful. And that's why I said making sure that when you're making a nested family, you use specific parameters like material parameter. All right, so now I do want to get to the cage because I know we're running out of time, and this is why I kind of like pre-built it. The plan was to build this whole thing from scratch, but as I was doing it, I realized, again, as you do with every family, that there are more complications, but there's little things that I want to show you, like like what I was just showing you with the circle and how the nested families work. So I really want to get into the cage because I think the cage is pretty cool and there's a lot of lessons learned there. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Yoshio just asked a question. Let me just see. Yoshio just asked, is it possible to create dimensions in a family file that stays to show on your project when loaded? Not redimensioning. No. I mean, I guess if you made like a 3D object that looks like a dimension, yeah. But no, these dimensions are meant to push and pull geometry and modify things. That are not meant to exist in both environments. However, when you have reference planes there, depending on which reference plane you're using, it makes your dimensioning easier in the project environment. And that's why they give you strong, weak, all these different type of references. But no. So now we're in the cage family. Okay. So this is the fixture cage. And this is pretty cool because there's a couple things that we can take away from the fixture cage. First is how you model the actual cage itself, which is pretty cool. If I go under 3D, and yeah, Scour just answered and did say yes you can, but only in plan views and section and not with the section elevation. So yeah, there's a way to do it as symbolic annotations, but not. I think what you were saying is sort of in this 3D environment. So okay, so what you'll notice is that this is just a single extrusion, which is pretty cool. And then this just goes down in how how do you want to make these shapes and what's the easiest way to make a shape like this cage. And so what I'll show you is I literally did, if I show you the extrusion, first there's an extrusion, right, which gives you this box, right? And then, you could make this a million different ways. You could these could each be extrusions, these could be sweeps, whatever. But then I just did a void in the middle of it that looks like this, right? And then that's it. So now you're only using 2 sketches to develop the outside cage, which I thought was pretty cool. So if I go to the front, you could see pretty simple parameters. There's heights, and then there's width, and then you could see I didn't even bother giving me the ability to modify this. If I wanted to, we could modify the 1/2 inch. The one thing I will mention is that when you're doing something like nesting these families, all of these parameters, the depth, the height, and the width, these are instance parameters. And this is important because when I load this into my regular fixture, I'm going to actually push and pull my box so that it locks within that family. And so if I did these as type parameters, I could do it, but then I'd have to make sure the center's aligned and make sure that there's associated, that the width is associated with it. So you're kind of doing you're kind of doing 2 of the same thing. You could make sure that you have a parameter and that you could associate it so that they're always the same, or you bring it in and you lock the outsides of it. So you kind of lock the middle or lock the outside. For this, I did the outside because I also just kind of like the way it looks. But what I really wanted to talk about was these cages or these bracing, because this is a perfect example of how you can skin a cat a million ways in Revit, and some are better than others. When I first modeled this, I'm going to show you what it looked like. I used sweeps because I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, we have. Let me see here. We have this sort of cage thing, and if you look at it, it's just 2. Sort of Z shapes, right? And that works, right? These are sweeps. They work. If I flex this, the width of this, it does what I need. Click 4 feet. You can see there it goes. And so these are just sweeps, right? So there's one sweep here. If I go to edit and sketch path, you can see there's a sweep there, and then there's another, and then I mirrored it, etc., etc. But then I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, now I got to make this X on the end. Am I going to use another sweep? And I started making a ton of geometry. I'm like, there's got to be an easier way. So then I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, there's actually 2 X's there. All right, X, 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 and then on the end there's an X. So why not just make the dang family an X? And so what I ended up doing was making this family. So now we're 2 families deep, right? We have our host, we have our cage, and then we have our cage bracing. Our cage bracing is getting loaded into our cage family. Our cage family is getting loaded into our host. And so this is why I like showing this, and I wanted to show this, and I'll go to this diagram again, right? We have number 4 here, which is loaded into number 3, which is then all loaded into number 1, okay? And Bim Lounge just said, for the cage sketch, efficiency trumps trying to limit the amount of void geometries, thinking of family performance. Yes, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think you need to worry about it too much here, but yes, depending on the family, you may want to take a little bit more time to draw the geometry, so you're not using as many voids. I don't think it makes a difference here, but valid point. So now, if I go and I click Edit Family, here's my brace, and the brace is another example of how to approach something multiple ways in Revit. So if I was to ask you, and someone who maybe didn't think about this family or hasn't built a lot of custom families and wanted to approach this, how would you build this X? If you did this as just an extrusion, right, what would the extrusion look like? Or hit F1 on my keyboard. The extrusion would look like this, right? It would, it would look like that. And guess what? You'd have to have reference planes for all these little points, right? If you want this thing to be flexible, you'd need reference planes for all these little points, right? So instead, by using 2 sweeps, all I need to do is create a sketch like this. Let me go to 3D. So I'm actually going to quickly make the X from scratch because I do think it's a valuable lesson. So I'm going to go File, New, Family. I'm just going to go with the generic model for now. Doesn't matter. And I'm going to talk about why I did what I did. So I'm going to go to my elevation view. I'm just going to go to front view. And SLLM asked actually the question I'm about to answer. So I'm just going to draw reference planes just like so. So now this is all you need. And if you want, you can make a center reference plane too. I am hitting all the wrong keys right now, by the way. Sorry, guys. So now I can just draw. Now all I need is a width and a height, or a height and a depth, whatever you want to call it. And to be really efficient too, you may want to make a profile family as well to control the profile of the sweep. I'm just going to draw it and sketch it for the sake of today. But I would suggest you use the profile family. And then here I'm going to say width. And here I'm going to say height. And these are instance parameters, so I can flex it. Okay. So now why use a sweep? So if I go to create a sweep and I sketch the path, I can just do this. Right? For those of you that don't know how to lock a line, if I type AL on my keyboard, I hit this reference plane, look what you can do. You can actually hit the end of this line. There's a little dot that pops up. If I click that, I can lock it. If I do the same thing on this bottom reference plane and I hit the little dot and lock it, this line is now locked to those two. Notice that? Those 2 reference planes. So whatever those go, the line's going to go with it. Same thing up here. Align, point, lock, align, point, lock. Finish that. I'm going to go in 3D to draw my profile because that's how I like to draw profiles, especially when I'm at an angle, because how else you can do it. And like I said, you may want to, in this situation, you'll probably want to create a profile, but that's a whole nother family. And right now I'm just going to do edit profile and I'm just going to sketch it. All right, so I'm going to go from this side in, and then I'm just going to type in, I don't know, a 1/2 inch. Okay. 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch seems a little much, but that's okay. And then I'm going to do like a 1/4 inch. I cannot type on my keyboard today. There we go. And then I click finish. And then click finish again. And so now I have this, right? If I go to my front elevation, I have this. And this is flexible. See what's happening there? So now I have a geometry shape. And if I go the other way, it's going to do the same thing. Right? And it's flexible. Okay, so now I can do the same thing on the other side, right? I can just go create, sweep. Oops, not swept blend. Oh, goodness. Create, sweep, sketch profile, go from bottom left to top right, doesn't really matter. Align, click the point, lock it, align, click the point, lock it. Again, align, click the point, lock it, align, click the point, lock it. Finish, edit profile, and then draw your profile. And again, this is just one of those things that you could sit there all day long, and I'm not even going to pay attention to the profile now. I'm just going to draw it. There we go. But now I have an X that, as you can see, completely flexible. right? And so it's just one of those things where if you sit back and you sort of think about how to approach that problem, there's probably an easier way. And again, if I drew an extrusion in elevation, how crazy would that be, right? I'm just reading, sorry, but did you lock the extremes of those X's? Yep. Alex just asked, switching nested profiles is not a thing, right? I don't remember actually if you can. There's certain areas of nested families you can switch and add a parameter to, but I don't think so. What you can do is just use visibility parameters to control things like that. The profile itself is a whole nother thing. I'm not really sure. So now, and it looks like BIM Lounge had a great idea, or is taking some inspiration from the sweep. So awesome, dude. That's all I can ask for. So now when I load this back into my cage family, I'm going to turn off the sweep one. The other great thing about it is I also can use it in both directions, right? The other, remember, I could sweep in one direction, I could copy it along the work plane, but then I'd have to redraw it to place it in this direction. So now I can use the same family across all of this. So once I bring it into the nested family, I'm just going to place one here and show you guys how it works. So if I go to create component, here's me placing my X, right? If I go in 3D, you can see there's my X there. If I go to my front view, here's the X. Now, remember these are instance parameters. So what can I do? I can just pull and grab this and then lock it. And then I can pull this side and lock it. I can pull this side and lock it. I can pull this side and lock it. So now, and notice I just have reference planes that are EQ, right? Those are just equalized reference planes. And then I can lock this here. Lock it. Robert just asked, would it be better to center the profiles? It depends. With the center, you would just need another reference plane, right? You would need a reference plane, a reference plane, a reference plane. I don't think it makes a huge difference because I am locking the outsides and it's staying where it needs to be. But yes, you can approach it. If I was using an array technique and I wanted to say I want 30 X's versus 10 X's versus 5 X's, then you'd have to use centers and do a different path there. But so now the only other thing that I did here is I gave myself material parameters, right? So here you can see fixture cage has a parameter. This guy has a fixture cage parameter as well. If I go in here, the material under edit type, you can see there's the material parameter there. Remember, you got to give yourself the ability to modify them into the deep. And the only other thing I did here is I made the X, I gave it a visibility parameter at the end of the day. Why? Because there was another fixture that was very similar, but it didn't have the cross bracing. So I had the ability to flex it. So then now if I go back to my actual project here, or my host family, which God only knows where that is now. Look at all these 3D views open. Let's see. Can we guess? This one. So now with my host family, all I have to do, because remember those are instance parameters, is place my cage. Right, here's my cage. Okay, I can pull this and I can lock it to the outside. Pull this, lock it to the outside. You can see why I like instance parameters. I think they're pretty fun. Pull this, lock it to the outside. Pull this, lock it to the outside, and then I have to check it in my my elevation view to make sure it's set up correctly. And you can see it's kind of there, but not quite. I'm going to pull this and lock it, and then I'm going to pull this up and lock it. And now if I go in 3D, you can see there's my cage sitting pretty. And then of course you need to pull these parameters through. So if I go to edit type, I need to make sure I pull my fixture cage through, and then you can see I have my cross bracing off. I made a parameter in my host project called cross bracing off. Okay, so just to show you real quickly what this cage does when you flex it, because it is pretty cool. If I take the cage out here and I change the height of it, or let's say the width of it, to 3 feet. Click apply. You can see it flexes pretty good. 2 feet, click apply. You can see now it's completely flexing exactly how you need it to. And if I wanted to, I could turn it on and off. So there we go. So now this thing is sitting pretty. It flexes, it's got everything we need in it, and then we can load it into our project. So now if I take a look again in the project, there's a couple things now I can do with this, which is pretty neat. Let's try this. Oof. 3D section box first floor. Did I cover how to carry the material parameter through? I kind of did, but I can cover it really quickly. So, who was that? Stuart just asked you cover how to carry the material parameter through. So this is what you need to do. I think I covered it, but maybe not in depth. So if I go in this family, right, and I click the object that I want, let me say there's none. This is how it'll look from the beginning. So I click the object that I want to carry through. Where it says material for that object, if I hit the little box to the right, I can add or use a parameter that's there. So first I need to give it a parameter. So I'll start from scratch on this one. I'll say bulb housing 2. So I just made one. So now I just assign a material parameter to the housing called bulb housing 2. Then I'm going to load that into my host. So if I load it into my host project, I'll say overwrite, sure. I'm going to select the object in the host. I'm going to go to edit type. And right here, you can see bulb housing 2. Notice how it's not grayed out. On the far right, there's a little box that says associate family parameter. You click that. Now you can do the same thing in your host family. You can assign it to a parameter. So, I can make a new one or use a parameter that's there. So that's what you're doing. You're basically just taking and assigning and then reassigning and then reassigning until you get to your host. And then when you bring it into your project, you have the ability to modify them through. So like, for example, in my host project, I have the ability to, if I click this and I go to edit type, I have the ability to change my materials as well as even my cross bracing on and off. Right, so I have a type here, and this is what I'm going to show you now. If I pull this over here, I'm trying to open Enscape and Revit at the same time so you can see it. So if I wanted to look at this and I wanted to say, okay, I want to see it without cross bracing, you can see here it is without the cross bracing. If I want to look at it at a different mounting height, that was one of the things I was looking at is what the stock mounting height is versus the height that I want it at. And there you can see there. And then if I wanted to modify and flex it, I can go to edit type, and now I can change and flex this however I want. So if I wanted to make it the overall fixture width to be 4 feet, click apply. There we go. So now you have a completely flexible family. All right. It looks like, who's that stranger in my house? Yes, Tom. I was just throwing in different Enscape people. I wanted somebody standing up and somebody sitting down for scale. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Thank you for all the questions, and feel free to reach out. You can hit me at Twitter at @TheRevitKid, or email me. Just go over to bimafterdark.com and you'll find my email address. This is hard to fit all of this in an hour, so I think I got done what I wanted to get done, which was to highlight some of the unique things of this. I will be posting on the blog tomorrow with the replay. I'll post all the images and references that I had there. And then you guys can dig through it, and perhaps maybe I'll post the sample file too, so you guys get some content from that. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you BIMbox for sponsoring. You guys are amazing. Be sure to subscribe here on the channel. Jordan just asked real quickly. I will answer before I sign off. He asked, he joined late. Is this a ceiling-based family? Yes, it's a ceiling-based family. Check out the replay in the beginning. I talked a little bit about why. So awesome, guys. Thank you for joining me today. You guys are amazing. Welcome to 2021. Got some cool stuff lined up. Keep coming back, and I'll see you guys soon. Amazing to have you here. Awesome. and if you want to learn more, again, check out bimafterdark.com, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.